Yeah, I'm Borut Pfeiffer, and right now I'm working with Haunted Temple Studios on a game called Skulls of the Shogun, which will be out for like XBLA and other download platforms published by Microsoft. And I've been in the game industry for about almost like 10 years or so, and a little more than that actually, 10, 11. And I've worked on games like Scarface on PS2, and I worked on a PS3 launch title called Untold Legends, Dark Kingdom, and I went to work at EA for a while on this like big Steven Spielberg project that eventually got canceled, but then went indie, and now I'm working for myself with a really small team and working on something that's we're real passionate about.
Fantastic. How did you find yourself in the game industry? What was your path, and how did you find yourself in game AI?
Right. So I mean, I've always wanted to be in games since I was like 13 or something, and at the time, before like a lot of these sort of game programs came up, it was you had to get a computer science degree. So I ended up at Georgia Tech in like '94 to '98. And then from there, I worked in the regular software industry because there wasn't many like game jobs around Atlanta. But then I met some guys, and we kind of did a startup, and so we were working on a game demo, and ran out of money and then took that experience and went to work at Radical in Vancouver on Scarface, and so I was working on all sorts of parts of the game, like the gameplay and like collision and physics, and like the world loading, world simulation, and AI, character AI, and vehicle AI. And so I was really drawn to that because the AI portions, you have the ability to kind of work on the design, the game design side of it, as well as the programming side. And so there's that balance of like creativity and like technical like problem solving that I really enjoyed. And a lot of game designers, like just regular game designers, might not have like the technical experience, so they're really like hands off with the design of the AI, and that's really up to the AI programmer a lot of times in terms of figuring out what how the AI architecture defines the player interactions and what affordances the player will have in terms of interacting with AI, which is very challenging and very fun.
That's really cool. So what elements from your computer science background do you find yourself drawing on, and are there other disciplines that you draw on when you're working in this field?
Right. I mean, in terms of computer science, especially when applied to AI, architecture, like developing architectures, understanding like that element, which you're only taught, I think, a little bit in like an average computer science program, at least back then. Maybe it's changed a little bit now, but you learn a lot of that on the job in terms of like finding the right levels of abstraction and building reusable components in a way that just allows growing the code. The thing about AI programming and gameplay programming as well is that it requires a lot of iteration. The code has to be really, really flexible in terms of easy to add new features, easy to remove features as well. So if it's not, very maintainable in that sense, and not just reusable in the sense that I can take the same module and use it again, but reusable in the sense that I can repurpose it, it becomes, very difficult to work with code unless you have like a clear idea of what the architecture should be to kind of allow yourself those spaces in the code. So that's like the biggest thing from CS. Excuse me, the biggest skill, but other, all sorts of influences. I mean, when working on character AI, just understanding, having even like a pop psychology understanding of like, human behavior and understanding how people would interact in certain situations, or even understanding like physiologically what your response times are, being able to know this delay in the AI responding to the player is actually going to be too long. It's going to be like it might be 300 or 400 milliseconds, which will cause the player to think differently about like how they cause that action. So you really have to understand how the player's modeling what the AI is doing in their head, and because that influences how they can interact with it.
Wow, that's something that I totally hadn't considered. So is there an example of game AI that you're able to share, something that made the gameplay work particularly well, or solved a problem, or?
Yes, I mean, I've been lucky and worked on a wide range of AI. I mean, from like sort of action games, which have more AI around sort of like, making the player feel like the hero and kind of entertaining them and not necessarily like being all about the challenge. I've also worked, while I was at EA, I worked on a project that ultimately got canceled, but it was really ambitious, where you had a secondary character that was like, with you and could help you and, would have like some sort of emotional simulation underneath the hood. That's still pretty rare these days. It was very ambitious at the time, and it's part of the reason it ended up getting canceled. But and then now I'm working on this sort of cross-genre game where it's a strategy game. It's turn-based, but it has like a big sort of analog world, so it uses a lot of like real-time strategy game AI components combined with like more traditional sort of turn-based strategy AI. So it's really interesting. There's always like, every game is different, and every problem requires you to really sort of look at it uniquely and draw from that toolbox.
Also really cool. So what would you say is the most important thing that game educators need to know about the difference between game AI versus maybe what would be seen as academic AI, or the things we're likely to try to teach?
Yeah, the biggest difference between game AI and academic AI is, we're really a lot of times trying to solve different problems. In terms of game AI, it's not about like creating the most rational behavior or the most intelligent behavior. It's creating the most believable behavior or the most entertaining behavior. Ultimately, game AI still has to, even if it's a challenge-based sort of game where you're shooting things or whatever, the AI has to lose to the player in an entertaining fashion and give them some challenge. But it's not, you're not meant to create this AI, which is ultimately supposed to like always destroy them. But in a lot of games, there's just the notion, especially like character-based games, you want to create a world of believable characters, and they have to have enough behaviors and animations that can kind of be fused together to create a sense of a believable world. But that's really difficult, especially when you consider like you want to like maximize your resources, so you can't like just like make tons of behaviors and make tons of animations. You really have to understand what the sort of the trade-offs are there, and understand what will make that AI more believable, more entertaining, all that kind of thing. And whereas on the academic side, it's much more about the challenge and like creating like the most the best behavior in some sort of more objective sense. Whereas in game AI, it's very subjective what that response is emotionally to it.
Okay. So would you have any advice for students in terms of what they should have in their portfolio or what they should be studying, looking into?
Right, yeah, it's one thing is always key is just like prototypes and like our game, small games that they worked on that like either, there's a couple things that I would look for is like one, okay, they understand key algorithms that are used repeatedly in games, whether it's like not just like A star, but like how do you use it? Maybe you use it in different ways besides pathfinding, just using like search techniques to like solve interesting problems. So that's one thing, just so they have a grasp of it, because you'll reuse that a lot of places, so they have an understanding of what those sort of core algorithms are, and then also that they have a design, a sense of game design in some capacity, whether they have like prototypes of like paper games, like board games or card games, be able to, or in their portfolio or whatever, just be able to discuss the game design elements combined and how that affects the technical architecture. Okay. So that's the ideal if you can find both of those in terms of like an AI programmer, I think.
So AI design is game design?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.